Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is the Texas PACE Authority's January T5 webinar. We do these each month. T5 stands for the third Thursday at 2 training series, the first one of 2022. So we're going to take the opportunity today to review really what was a fantastic year in 2021, and then looking ahead to 2022, some things that are happening there. And I'm pleased today not to be the only presenter, but to be joined by some guest presenters, some significant stakeholders in PACE in Texas who are going to talk about projects and programs in their representative areas. So we will go ahead and get started now. For the webinar today, everyone is muted and your video is disabled. So please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, not the chat function, but the Q&A, and we will monitor the Q&A throughout the webinar and get you responses to those questions either live or after. We'll record this webinar and it'll be available on our website as with the other T5s. And because this is really a training, if you need a PDH certificate for professional hours, you can respond to the email you'll get as follow-up, and we can get that to you. So our presenters today, I'm kind of the moderator, but I'll be presenting also at the end. Dub Taylor, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Texas PACE Authority, and we're joined by John Frew with Frew Development Group, Diane Rath, who's the AACOG Executive Director, and Wayne Emerson, who is with the City of Dallas, serves as a Economic Development District Manager. And I'll go into their backgrounds a little bit further as we introduce them. So our agenda today, we'll first hear a project overview on a specific project that John is the developer on. Then we'll go into the PACE program in the Alamo Area Council of Governments region, and Diane will lead that. We'll then talk about what's happening in the City of Dallas, or what's happened in the City of Dallas most recently. I'll close with an update on the 2021 accomplishments and achievements, and then a forward look into 2022. Cover some resources available to you, and then we'll make sure we get to that Q&A. So with that, let me first introduce John Frew. John is the president and CEO of Frew Development Group, LLC. They are a commercial and residential real estate development company. He established Frew Development Group in 2003 as a continuation of his career as an attorney, investment banker, and senior governmental official. Frew Development Group has managed more than 2 million square feet of renovation and ground-up construction, with ownership interests including hospitality, retail, and multifamily. So John, I'm going to hit your first slide, and why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Dub, and welcome. It's good to have everyone here today, and not in person, but someday we'll get back to that. Let's go to the first slide. Or the second slide, sorry. There we go. So I'm going to start off just without equivocation that I believe PACE is an exceptionally valuable tool for developers. It's a valuable tool for communities, for lenders all across the range. But speaking as a developer, I've been very pleased with it. I'll offer some pros and cons. I mean, nothing can always be all positive. So I really searched and talked to my staff and my partners and said, okay, let's add the plus and minuses. And the pros, it's up to 20% of your capital stack for eligible expenditures. That's huge. Second, it's non-recourse to the developer. Now, the recourse is in place during construction, but it burns off and when you get your final CO. So that was not the driving issue for us, but it was very important. And third, it's treated as equity by your lender. So your capital stack can involve less cash equity supplemented by the PACE loan. That's enormously valuable. The cons, it's not cheap compared to your debt. So you can look at it as expensive debt or cheap equity. Our loans have been around 6%. We found that to be, a reasonable number to pay. So we were very pleased with it. Second, if you're going to sell your project, you should expect that, at least in my experience, that the buyers are going to want the PACE loan paid off. So as we've gone into our third PACE loan, we've negotiated a payoff penalty. Normally it burns off after 5 years or so, but we looked at that year 3 period and tried to get something that would amount to a tax versus a penalty. And we've been pleased with that, but it's something you really have to keep in mind. And last, it's not a big thing, but as I said, lenders treat it as equity. Some lenders also treat it as debt, in that they include the PACE loan payment in debt service coverage calculations. But overall, enormously valuable tool. So next slide, please. Keys to success. So first, in my experience, I think it's very important to decide whether you're going to use one lender or two. Typical commercial lenders are not PACE lenders, and typical PACE lenders will make, or some of them will make construction loans, but at a higher rate. So we blended the two. We had a long-time lender that we matched with a PACE-only lender, a non-bank bank that I'll talk about in a second, but that worked great for us. Second is the payoff penalty, negotiate that. Third, have a solid relationship with your local officials. It's, in our case, we would not have succeeded without for that. But I believe that if you're going to build in a community, that's something you ought to do anyway. But in the case of our path, it made all the difference in the world. And then fourth, trust the Texas PACE Authority. They're good, they're smart, they're respected, and they're good people. I found them very easy to work with. And they know what they're doing. The PACE in the box process, they have this down, and it's really pretty cool to see the whole thing evolve as it has. Next slide, please. So why Rockport? Rockport, if you've not been, you really should visit. It's a great little community on the Texas coast, about 20 miles northeast of Corpus. My wife's family and my partner's family have been there for generations. And, we were married there. It's our second home. We love it there. My company, as Doug mentioned, has developed more than 2 million square feet of space in the various sectors, including the HEB Center in Cedar Park, Texas. Very proud of that one. But we were preparing to build a hotel in Rockport with my partner, Mark Orr. Mark has been a developer in the Rockport area since 1995, and his father for 40 years prior to that. And we had been planning this hotel, and then Hurricane Harvey, the bluish greenhouse you see in that's our former house, and our boat is somewhere under that pot. When you see a picture of a house that's just standing, every other house is destroyed. Your instinct is to say, well, those people were so lucky. They're not lucky. You don't want to be the house that's standing because there are no workers, there are no stores. It's awful. And we were fortunate enough to sell our house to someone who then fixed it up over the course of the next year and a half or so as workers became available. And the insurance took care of the boat. But the whole idea that was, instead of a hotel, I called Mark and said, listen, we're both going to get back into Rockport from where we're up in Austin sometime in the next couple of weeks. And let's start thinking about something different. Our company was hired by the state of New York to demolish 700 homes on Staten Island. And we saw firsthand how challenging the aftermath of these natural disasters are, and the absolute need for housing. So I gave Mark a high bar, and I said, look, if I could wave a wand, I'd have 3 things. First, we'd get enough land to build 2 phases. Second, we would have, it'd be in the city of Rockport just for emotional purposes. And third, and this is probably going to be impossible, we want it to be in a non-flood zone. I mean, you're a mile from the beach, and it's kind of tough to do, but it took him a while, and he found it. And so about a month later, we closed on a 34-acre property at the intersection of Highway 35, Pearl, which is Pearl Point, hence the name. Next phase, or next slide. So why PACE? Well, we had closed on a PACE loan with Collins Community Credit Union in Iowa, our longtime lender, and Stonehill Capital of Atlanta, our PACE lender. And we closed on a PACE loan for this hotel that we opened about 2 weeks ago in Dillon, Colorado. And I called them and said, listen, we're entertaining this housing project in Rockport, Texas. Would you be interested? And they both said, absolutely. They wanted to be a part of it. So next slide, if you would. So over the course of a very rapid time, it was about 5 to 6 months, September 2019, we had our first discussions with our lender, our PACE lender, and they in turn had discussions with the Texas PACE Authority. A month later, we had the first meeting with the Aransas County and TPA to review PACE in the box and the process and get them, comfortable. Mark has known Judge Burt Mills, the judge of Aransas County for, maybe 40 years, but our senior project manager, Russell Cole, and the judge were boyhood friends. I mean, we have deep relations, and there was a lot of trust going in, and that made a huge difference. So they asked for a public meeting to introduce PACE, and Marina came up in November and we did a great presentation, and then so they put it on the agenda for a month later, and in December Charlene made a presentation. The respect was just very obvious, and the professionalism, and they trusted the Texas PACE Authority, and they adopted it. So next slide. Now our challenge is that PACE does not, or Greenfield site does not qualify for PACE. So this is our site. You can see where the trees are cleared for phase 1. Phase 2 is to the right, and then the corner is where today is a commercial setting. So when I practiced law, I had the privilege of having clients that said, John, don't tell us what we cannot do. Tell us what we can do. Think creatively. Find a way to make this work. So I pulled our group together and gave them that challenge and said, we need to think about how we could do this. And what we came up with is, next slide, we built a garage. We built a garage and convinced the city of Rockport to issue a certificate of occupancy. Now, that usually doesn't happen on a garage. It can happen, but it's normally, the CO comes with the house or with the associated residential building. But City of Rockport also great relationships, and they wanted our project as a recovery tool from Hurricane Harvey badly, and they were willing to do this. So we built a garage, and the rest of the site became a renovation. The rest of the site qualified for PACE. It was as simple as that. Creative, not unusual, but it required those relationships at the local and state level and the county level to make it work. Now, next slide, please. So, January 2020, 5 months after we had our first meetings, we closed on our construction and PACE loans. In February of last year, we received our CO on our final building, and this year, about 2 weeks ago, we're 95% occupied, and phase 1 is on the market. So we could not be more pleased with the whole thing. Now, as I close, let me go on to phase 2 in the next slide. So another unique challenge for a developer with PACE is that when you build and you're going to sell, then you really need a single purpose entity, and you need a separate tax parcel. So phases 1 and 2 at Pearl Point are owned by separate entities, and phases 1 and 2 are on separately platted entities. That meant that our phase 1 qualification for PACE did not apply to phase 2. So next slide. We built another garage. It was as simple as that. This time we built the maintenance building, but this was the first one up. It's right behind the phase 1 garage, and we qualified for PACE and did the whole thing again. So we closed on our loans, and then the next slide, please, Deb. And one more slide. Yeah. Phase 2 is well under construction. So it works is my message. It's valuable. It works for us anyway. I believe it'll work for others, but this is a case where a community was ravaged by a hurricane. We never would have thought about building multifamily housing there. But circumstances came around, and as we explored PACE with the local leaders, with our lenders, and ultimately the Texas PACE Authority, we kept finding a green light, and we just went for it. And we're very, very pleased and proud of our relationship with the Texas PACE Authority in this tool. Thank you.
John, thank you. And just to clarify, I think that's an excellent illustration of how to utilize PACE on a greenfield site that can be developed in phases or tranches like this. The other thing to point out, which you didn't mention specifically, is that on new construction, the baseline essentially for PACE becomes whatever the applicable local codes are. And with Pearl Point, what was done is equipment was specified and building envelope specifications were higher than that, which means that over the life of the property itself, that tenants are going to enjoy lower utility costs than they would have ordinarily. That also adds some resiliency benefits to the property, which obviously in an area devastated by a hurricane is very important.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you being with us. I know you've got a time constraint, and so feel free to drop off and we will move forward. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So next on our speaking agenda, we have Diane Rath. Diane has served as the Alamo Area Council of Governments Executive Director since December of 2014. She is, during this tenure, AACOG has been recognized with a variety of national awards around innovation and transportation partnerships. AACOG is responsible for 11 program areas across a 13 county region in the greater San Antonio, Bexar County area, with a $74 million budget and 300 employees providing both service delivery and planning. She has extensive background in workforce development, both public and private sector, serving as the chair of the Texas Workforce Commission under Governor George W. Bush, and she is very active in the San Antonio community on a number of different boards and committees. So with that, Diane, let me get to your slides and let you take over.
Thank you, Deb, and thanks for including us today. I really do appreciate it. And I have to say how much I appreciate our partnership with TPA. It has really made our being able to implement it very easy in our area. So next slide. Let me tell you a little bit about where we have PACE in our region. We have a 13 county area. I say we're the most diverse in the entire country because we go up to Gillespie and Fredericksburg, the Hollywood of Texas, and all the way down to McMullen, where you don't have a single incorporated city, and it's the highest per capita revenue of any county in the country. That's your trivia for today. But as we look at our 13 counties, our counties started adopting it in July of 2019. We had done probably 3 or 4 presentations once it was adopted by the legislature. And Comal County started the adoption in July of 2019. And then one of our municipalities within Bexar County, Leon Valley, adopted it in October of 19. And then we had a little bit of a lull, and Hondo and Medina County came along in November of 19, followed by Guadalupe in 20. And then the dominoes started falling, with San Antonio falling into place in March of 2020. Of course, then we go into COVID lockdown. And we've now seen a resurgence with a few of our municipalities adopting it the last couple of months. I have to say, in our region, Bexar County, our largest county in the home of San Antonio, has not adopted it and is not moving forward with it. So each of our municipalities has to adopt it separately. So it's a little bit unique in that regard. Next slide. Now, each of these governmental entities, as they adopt their resolution, they also indicate that AACOG is going to be their third-party administrator. And at the same time, they execute the ILA with AACOG to provide the services needed to implement and manage the PACE program. And then we issued, at the very first one after Comal County, we issued an RFP and then selected Texas PACE Authority as our technical partner for the administration of PACE. This works very well for us. We do most of the local education and outreach, and TPA does all the heavy work. So the heavy lifting, the technical part of it, and they bring their expertise and they're able to do that part of it. So the collaboration and the partnership works very easy here. In our area, our governmental entities were very pleased that we were willing to take in and fill that role, and it really relieved them of the burden and I think the hesitation they had about entering into it. So for us, that worked very, very well. Next slide. And even though we started in 2019, then as y'all saw, we had COVID hit and everything came to a screeching halt. We are very, very pleased that last month we closed our first project in San Antonio. And it's called the iconic Travis building. It is an Art Deco building. It's been downtown with primarily retail on the bottom and offices up above. They are going to do a $5 million renovation. At the 10-story office building. They also have an adjacent 6-story parking garage that you can kind of see right behind it. And then they're going to transform that into 63 multi-family units with maintaining the dedicated retail space on the ground floor. This is a great location right downtown, and the demand for downtown housing in our area is really picking up. Their improvements are going to include their roofing, their HVAC, all the plumbing and the LED lighting, and that includes in the garage. And their estimate, the savings are going to be $8.4 million energy costs. So it was a really good story for us, a great first project. We were very fortunate that got a lot of attention. Number one, it's downtown, and number one, it was the first one that implemented PACE in our area. I have to say we have a couple city council members that are very, very supportive. And they really assist us in getting the word out about it. Next slide. So when we look down the road, what do we have after our 2 years of work on this? And we're very excited that we do have a pipeline that is building. Castroville, we have letters of intent for 3 buildings in downtown Castroville. They're really going to preserve their historic area. In San Antonio, we have a small office building, a large apartment complex where our fingers are crossed. Those are going to close very shortly. We have a very large historic church that'll be very visible. And we're working on a very large medical project. We're very excited about it. It will be very high profile. They're having some similar issues to what you heard about the Greenfield, and so they're working through those. But that will really, I think, launch us into the big deal here. And we've got a couple of multifamily projects. Comal County's got a couple of projects they're working on. One has been in the hopper for a couple of years now, so we're really hoping that it's going to finally come to maturity. I think that we have seen in our area that the last 3 months, we've had a tremendous resurgence, a lot of interest, a lot of outreach. And importantly, as we read in our business journal, where we see projects are being acquired or they're being planned, we're aggressively reaching out to them and introducing them to PACE. We don't have that much new construction in our inner city, but we really value our historical buildings. And so we develop that, and we do a lot of that in this community. So that's where we've been very successful in attracting interest. And I have to say, the interest in the folks we're working with and developers range from our very high-end medical facility down to a group of ice houses that are owned by a foreign national who owns several of them, brought his builder, brought his contractor, brought everybody in, because your ice house margin, or most places call it a convenience store. In San Antonio, it's an ice house. Most convenience stores' margin is very, very slim. So they were extremely interested in it, particularly if they can bundle several of their properties as they move forward into one loan. So we're excited about the future. Next slide. We think it's going to be good, and I appreciate telling our stories. We're very glad we finally have a story to tell, because it took us a long time to get here, and even after everybody adopted it, we weren't sure it was going to happen. But we do see it happen. We do see it coming, and it's interesting to me how long some projects take, but if it's a developer that's familiar with PACE, how quickly they can also move. So Deb, thanks for including us. I'll look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much, Diane, for being with us today and for your ongoing partnership with AACOG. It's been great, and we look forward to many more projects. It's great to have one to talk about now there in San Antonio. So moving forward with our final guest presenter today, Wayne Emerson. Wayne serves as the Economic Development District Manager at the City of Dallas. He is our principal point of contact working with the City of Dallas on PACE. And his prior experience is with the Allen Economic Development Corporation. Allen is a high growth city, Collin County, just north of Dallas. Also Irving ISD and the City of Capel. And Wayne is also a certified economic development finance professional. So with that, Wayne, let me get your first slide teed up and turn it over to you. There we go.
All right, thanks for that, Dub. I had a beautiful skyline of the city of Dallas, but the sun shifted on me and it was kind of washing me out. So I'll just go with my current background. I know the topic was PACE in 2021, and in the city of Dallas, we had our best year ever in 2021. But just kind of looking back, the city gave support for the PACE Act to be signed into law in the state back in 2013. We participated in the PACE in the Box working groups with Dub and Charlene and the Texas PACE Authority. And then in 2015, we adopted resolution of intent to establish the PACE program. In 2016, the city established and enacted its PACE program. And we went through a procurement process, a competitive procurement process, and we selected the Texas PACE Authority to be our program administrator. And then finally in 2017, we closed our first PACE project, the Butler Brothers building, which I'm going to talk about a little bit here in a second. And to my knowledge, it's still the largest PACE project ever done in the state of Texas. So I don't think anyone's knocked us off. We almost knocked ourselves off, but hopefully we'll be able to do that next year. And then finally, I think really importantly in 2020, the city enacted the Comprehensive Environmental and Climate Action Plan, or the CCAP as we call it. And it explicitly wants to use the PACE program to achieve those goals. So one thing that was very surprised was that a quarter of all carbon emissions actually come from building operations throughout the world. And so we view the PACE program as an excellent way for us to do our part as a 9th largest city in the country to reduce our carbon footprint. Okay, next slide for me, Doug. So I mentioned, so in total, we've done 8 projects. I believe we're the largest government, we've done the most projects of any government entity in the state, which is only 8, which it's a good number, but I think we could do more. I think the PACE program is so amazing. It has a lot of not just environmental benefits, but it really benefits the bottom line for developers and for cities. We've done 8 projects. In 2021, we did 4. So it's really starting, I think, to take off in the city. The word's getting out, and we're hoping that 2022 we're going to double that and do another 8. Next slide, please, for me, Doug. So I mentioned we did 4 projects in 2021. The first one we did was Redbird Mall, just at the beginning of the year. I'll speak a little bit more about that one. We also did our first new construction with the JW Marriott Hotel. So this was a parking garage, which a JW Marriott Hotel will go in its place. It's not finished construction yet, but soon will. And then we also did a mixed use retail and office building in Preston Center. For those of you familiar with Dallas, Preston Center is really the center of kind of the real estate community in Dallas. So I'm hoping that word gets around to the folks in the real estate community or asking about this, this upgrade, and we'll see some momentum flow from there. And then our last deal we did this year was White Rock Tower, smaller deal, but really just went in and redid some HVAC work on that one. Next slide for me, Doug. So I mentioned the first project we did, the Butler Brothers building. And this is one way that I want to show you the value that PACE brings as an economic development tool. So the owner of this building had reached out to help us with this building. This building was originally built in 1910. It was a warehouse for the Butler Brothers retail store. And it essentially had been vacant since the 90s on, and it was kind of a real eyesore. And if you can see there to the right there is City Hall, so it's especially an eyesore when the city is looking at it. And so originally when they came to the city to help with this redevelopment, there was an ask for the city to help, but really just through the power of PACE, because the PACE loan itself was able to replace the mezzanine loan. So you had a mezzanine loan of about 15%. We were able to slide 6% of PACE financing in there instead. And that lowered the overall cost of capital, or weighted average cost of capital for the project. And it went into the green from there. But before, the developers just weren't able to make it pencil with traditional financing. And because of PACE, they were able to do that. Next slide for me, Doug. Okay, the Continental Gin building. This one's really cool. We actually did use some traditional economic development dollars with this one. We used about $3 million in TIF grants. But I think what's neat about this one is this building was originally built in 1888. It was people know Dallas, we have the Cotton Bowl. We had a large cotton industry in the late 1800s. This was the largest cotton gin manufacturing facility in the entire world at the time. I believe it is the oldest building in Dallas. If it's not the oldest, it's certainly one of the oldest. And because of PACE with the financing that came in, it was able to get these clean energy upgrades, and it's now a LEED Silver certified building. And then and we're able to preserve that history, but it took PACE, it took a grant of $3 million in TIF funding, but also it got historical tax credits, new markets tax credits. There's just kind of all these other economic development tools that went in so that we could preserve this piece of history. Next slide. Okay, lastly, this is the Reimagine Redbird Mall project. So this PACE loan we actually did close in 2021. This one had just about a little bit of everything in it. The assessment total of PACE was about $3.35 million. The story behind this one was the developer, and I'll get to more to this in a bit, but the developer essentially had started some redevelopment on this, and then it came time in the indoors, and they realized they needed a new chiller and a new boiler. And so they were able to go out and get 100% financing, so no money down, through PACE to get those improvements. If you could go to the next slide for me, Doug. And you can see here that it's the city and has contributed a lot to this project. Redbird Mall at one time was a thriving indoor mall, just like all indoor malls were. But as we know, the indoor mall has been in decline, changing demographics in the area. And really the mall became, an albatross, just not doing much of anything. And the city committed to that developer to make something of this place. And so when you take a look at all the investment the city has made in it, we put this investment to make the development happen, but it still needed a little something extra, and PACE was able to do that. And one thing I really want to kind of add as an economic development tool for PACE, and I'm seeing this with some deals that I'm working right now, is that as economic developers, we have to fill that gap. And with PACE helps fill that gap because number one, it increases the NOI of a building. And so, as you know, with the NOI increases, you get more value. If you get more value, you can attract more debt to that project. So that's less incentives that we need to give to it. But it also, because as in the other instance with the Butler Brother building, it also replaces more expensive debt, which lowers the overall debt service. And so that's another gap that we're constantly being asked to fill is, hey, can you help us out with that debt service, to get it back to 1.25? Well, with PACE, we just throw a PACE loan in there and that debt service gets worked out, and we don't have to spend any of taxpayer dollars to do that. And in the end, we get a building with more value. We get a building that is good for the environment moving forward, and we spend less taxpayer dollars. So it has been an invaluable economic development tool for us. I think that's all I have, Dub. I don't think there's any more slides.
Great. Yep.
Well, thank you.
Yep, that's it. We appreciate it. And yeah, an excellent illustration again of kind of leveraging and combining different funds and tools and resources that are available to get these projects done. So thanks for being with us today, Wayne, sorry. And now I'm going to move on to kind of a wrap up. Normally we would do this, I guess maybe as part of the introduction to the webinar, but we're going to close with it instead. So if you don't know about PACE, and we probably, maybe should have said this at the outset, but the problem that PACE was really designed to help solve is this one. And that is that business owners know they can save money over the long term by making these investments in their buildings that achieve efficiency and water and so forth. Oops, got ahead of myself there. But these tend to be expensive upgrades, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems that have a high first cost. Installation costs can be challenging. And given all the other expenses and the challenges with operational budgets, these oftentimes don't rise to the top. They sort of get pushed down until maybe they have to be addressed on an emergency basis. Failing equipment, air conditioners don't go out in December, they go out in July. And that means that, they have to be replaced really kind of on an emergency basis, usually at a premium cost. And it may not be the equipment that you would select if you were the owner, if you had more time. Also doing this on a piecemeal basis means that across the building itself, which really is a system, they become sub-optimized over time. So that's sort of a result of this. On the new construction side, there's kind of a different set of challenges, and that is that when a project is put together and the scope is developed, you start looking at, okay, what's your ideal scenario? What's your wish list? And typically the budget you've assembled to accomplish the project is less than that. So then you go through the exercise of what's called value engineering. And I put value there in quotes because that's what it's called. But over the long term, it's really the opposite of that. You don't get good value from kind of cutting corners at the front end. And more often than not, projects that get cut are high efficiency mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. Why? Kind of like, when you go and look at a new house, what sells houses? Marble countertops, granite countertops, stainless steel kitchens. Very, very seldom would a prospective homeowner crawl into the attic to check the efficiency rating of the air conditioner. So things that are hidden behind the walls usually get cut first. So that's a challenge with new construction. All of this results in higher operating costs, lower building performance, lower asset valuation, indoor comfort challenges with temperature control and humidity, and then overall lower productivity. So the solution for this, PACE, a solution, can provide 100% of the funding, as we've seen, or part of the funding. This is for water conservation, distributed generation, as well as energy efficiency. Key to this is private financing. Even though it's facilitated through a governmental mechanism, these are private dollars, so they can be used to leverage. The PACE program serves as a conduit that allows longer term financing through this special assessment mechanism. This is authorized through the local government code. Wayne mentioned this back in 2013. Diane, in her presentation, talked about local government enablement and how They're supporting that in the AACOG region. It's voluntary and open market, meaning that any owner within those established PACE regions or a soon to be established PACE region can participate. Any contractor can do the work, any lender can provide the financing, any engineer can do the review. So that's not a set list, it's not closed or by any means, it simply is a mechanism to help facilitate projects. And in Texas, commercial buildings, commercial properties, including nonprofits, are eligible. Multifamily, 5 units or more. The project that John illustrated, Pearl Point, is one of those. And then also any sort of industrial, manufacturing, or agricultural. About the only type of property that is not eligible is single family residential or residential up to 4 units. So in Texas, we've seen a lot of growth since 2013. We now have 72 local PACE programs. These are cities and counties that have created the program and put that together as a tool for property owners within their areas. And this now covers 60% of the state's population. As you can see in the map, there's a lot of yellow there where there aren't programs, but there's a lot of blue. And the blue are the areas where programs are adopted and where the majority of the population resides in the urban areas. Listed the counties and the cities here. And we added 15 new programs in 2021. Really good growth and sort of covering the footprint of the state with new programs going forward. Our role, just to reiterate, is that we really serve a kind of an outsourced governmental function. When a city or a county establishes the PACE program, they don't really want to set up a PACE department to operate it. So they bring us in to operate it for them. And so we do that individually with cities and counties, and also in arrangements as we have with AACOG to do it on a regional basis. So everything above this line here with the governmental establishment of the program and administration and operation is really that governmental function. Below the line is really all the private transaction. So that's there where the property owner is working with a capital provider to identify funding for the project, working on scope with the service provider to complete it. And then all of that is reviewed by us on behalf of the cities or counties to make sure that the project complies with all the requirements under state law and guidelines. And from a project perspective, things really have grown as well. Wayne had a slide like this for the city of Dallas. This is a roll-up for the state. So 54 projects completed through the end of 2021, over $190 million of investment. The jobs number, 2,421. You may ask, where does that come from? Well, there are construction jobs, right? Those are temporary. The project is completed and the crews move on. But many of these projects, as you've seen, I think in Wayne's slide, involve hospitality. So this is a new hotel that did not exist before, where now you have a staff that helps maintain and serve guests at the hotel. So the jobs are real that are facilitated through these PACE projects. On the emission reduction side, this is a calculation looking at the average power plant emissions in the state of Texas and how many fewer emissions are released into the atmosphere by those power plants as a result of these projects. The energy saved, that's kilowatt hours, that's electricity, 53 million, big number on an annual basis. Natural gas, 44 million BTUs per year, and a lot of water and wastewater savings as well. The types of projects that we've seen across the state, about half of them have been energy efficiency related, and that's not surprising. Typically, the energy portion of the overall building's utility bill is going to be the biggest number, so that's the biggest opportunity to work from. Water conservation, about a third, and then distributed generation, 12%. Distributed generation projects have been largely solar photovoltaic, which can be easily mounted on rooftops, on carports, et cetera, adjacent to the property, and help serve that load of the building. As you can see on the financing bar chart here, 2015 was really when things got rolling. We had a little bit of activity in 2016. Again, these are statewide numbers. 2017, it grew. 2018, a little bit. 2019, from a project dollar perspective, was the biggest. 2020 was COVID year, even though that really, I think, put a number of projects on hold given the uncertainty in the commercial real estate market. We actually had more transactions, far more than we expected in 2020. And then in 2021, just ended, 57 million in new projects in 2021 that closed, and a very healthy pipeline going into 2022 as well. Most of these were in the commercial and retail sector, followed by hospitality, hotels, commercial office, nonprofit, mixed use, et cetera. You can see the breakdown of the pie chart to the right. And so what's next in 2022? What's on the horizon? Well, we continue to see the strong regional expansion, cities and counties that are better understanding how PACE works, how it can benefit property owners and businesses within their areas are taking the steps to create PACE programs. In terms of projects, our project pipeline, that's potential projects that may close from a dollar perspective, actually is greater than the total projects that have closed to date, which is $190 million. Now, all of those, won't go to completion, but a fair number of them will. So we're very encouraged by this, and we think 2022 is going to be a stronger year probably than 2021, and that hockey stick growth will continue. Another thing really kind of on the external factor side is that PACE in Texas, even though I guess it's been established for 9 or so years now, is still a relatively new financial product and or strategy. Nationally, it's only been known about a few years longer than that, and that's still pretty new in the spectrum of financing products. But now we have where I guess the marketplace for lenders was exclusively kind of specialized PACE capital providers, which have really played an integral role. We're now seeing large pension funds, retirement funds, very long-term investors, Nuveen, Athena, that have purchased PACE specialty lenders because these PACE investments, sort of the long-term nature, the low risk, kind of the mission-driven aspects of saving energy, water, and helping the environment match up well with these large investment funds. They are engaged now, and so I think we'll see more of that. The third bullet here, higher utility costs. This is kind of I guess a double-edged sword or a benefit or challenge for some. In Texas, our utility costs have always been relatively low, certainly compared to some other parts of the country. The Northeast, California have had very much higher cost per unit for power, for gas, for water. Texas, we've enjoyed pretty low rates historically, but that's changing as we're putting increasing demands on our utility infrastructure. That's requiring investment to expand and to harden those facilities. The sort of response to our winter events a year ago, that weatherization activity, sort of the hardening again of those utility infrastructure facilities, that cost will be recovered through rates over time. So we can expect utility costs to go higher, meaning that if you're trying to cost justify or to cash flow an energy or water conservation project by avoiding utility costs, that's going to be easier to do as our rates go up. Our units of consumption in Texas are high, just the nature of our geography and weather patterns, but the cost per unit is going to be going up as well, both the commodity side as well as the delivery costs through the transmission system. On the internal side, things we're doing at Texas PACE Authority to help support owners and projects going forward. Our program guide, which was last updated a few years ago, is being updated now. What we've heard over and over again is it's great, it's narrative, it's a book, but sometimes it's hard to find what you need when you need it. So we're updating that, but we're also going to be adding kind of some more visuals and graphics to make it user friendlier, if you will, so that people will be able to find the resource they need quickly and easily. That's happening this quarter. To complement that, we're going to be doing an online sort of a self-paced service provider training. So if you're a contractor, a lender, even an owner that wanted to kind of go through PACE 101 plus, technical training and so forth, that would be available to sort of take and fit in at your leisure. It will have a test function where if you achieve a certain level on the test, then you can become a trained or a certified service provider, and we will list you on our website that way. The other thing we're doing is as projects continue to increase and the overall market continues to grow, we know that we need to build a more robust system to help process all of this activity. And so we're making those investments this year, a new IT-based system to help with the applications, to help owners do a lot of the work on their own that now there's a lot of back and forth. So this can be done more efficiently. We expect to have that operational second quarter of this year, probably third quarter, fully operational. And kind of my vision for this, if you've ever done your own taxes and used TurboTax, it's very menu driven. You can't get to the next step until you've completed the first. It's going to be set up in that manner. So look for that later in this year. So with that, that's the update for 2021 and 2022. Some resources just to make you aware of, you may already be. Our main website is here. The program guide and technical standards, I mentioned the current versions are there as well, the updated versions will be listed. Events and trainings that are upcoming, case studies on projects, ones you've heard about today. Pearl Point is featured there, as well as some in Dallas, and we are working on the Travis building, and we'll have that up soon, plus a number of others that we didn't cover today. And then the service provider directory, which is sortable by different types of providers. So if you're looking for an engineer, if you're looking for a lender, if you're looking for another support role for PACE, that's a resource for you there. And then our webinars, the one we've had today, you can see we've had a series. We started this back in April of 2020 when COVID hit and we couldn't do in-person trainings. These are all recorded. These are on our YouTube channel. If you go to the website here, click on any of these links, that will start a video, and you can watch these in case you have colleagues that missed today and would like to watch, or if you need to go back for reference and look at any of these later, that's a resource for you as well. And so with that, we will wrap up. I know we're getting close to time, and there had been a question or two that I think have been answered already online. So I don't see any more, and not hearing any or seeing any. I'll close and thank you for attending today, and thank our presenters for joining us and making the time today. I think it certainly adds a lot to hear directly from stakeholders across the state, and we value the relationship we have with them. So thanks for being with us today. Let's see, we've got a chat here that popped up. Let me see if I can get this. Thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you all for attending, and look for our next T5 next month on the Texas PACE Authority website. Have a good day.